Hello again and welcome to the Warhammer 40k Mordian Glory video. Now before we get into today's video, I would like to say a big thank you to Jason Barnett for sending in some really cool pictures of his camo marines. Basically, it looks like a bunch of Primaris and Space Marines which have been painted up in a really cool camouflage paint scheme. It's similar to sort of the chocolate chip paint scheme that I've seen a few people use before. It looks really good. Really like the camo scheme. Really like the Centurions especially. They look really good. So thank you for sending those pictures in, Jason. If anyone else has got any cool pictures, please post them on my Facebook page. There will be a link down in the description below. And if at all possible, I will try and use your pictures in my videos. Now, without further ado, let's get on with today's video. Now, I actually had something else planned today. I had Lord Commissar Loadout's Quick Tip Tactica video, but I thought this topic is pretty relevant at the moment and needs to be discussed, which is the announcements and reveals that Games Workshop has been doing regarding Space Marine Codex version 2. Adeptus Astartes, or as people are starting to call it, Adeptus Restartes, which I think is absolutely hilarious. So for those of you that have been living under a rock or don't quite have the time to keep up to date with all this news, Codex Space Marines, Adeptus Astartes, is being redone. This often happens in an edition. Games Workshop will release each Codex one by one, and then try and go back to some of the earlier ones that they might not have got it quite right. And they did this with Chaos Space Marines, and now they've done it with regular Space Marines. Now the difference is, whereas Chaos Space Marine Codex version 2, I didn't really cover a lot on that, even though I have a World Eaters army. I didn't really cover a lot on that because, as Games Workshop themselves said, it was essentially a consolidation effort. There's obviously a lot of different data sheets which have come out from various expansions, and Games Workshop themselves even said if you have this book and the couple of expansions, you don't need to rebuy this codex. It's simply for new people who are getting into Chaos Space Marines. It's got updated rules, updated points, and by and large they got it. By and large they got it right. There were a couple of bits they missed, but by and large it was just an update, and it was good. And I know a lot of people were saying, "Oh, why are they re-releasing the same codex?" Well, it was good because Games Workshop said they wanted to keep bookkeeping down to a minimum, and so by consolidating everything that they brought over. That they brought out over the course of a couple of years, they were going back to the one book policy, which is great. Now Codex Space Marines has come out, is being announced, and there's a whole load to unpack, guys. And this could be a long video. I may break it down to multiple parts. I'm not quite sure yet. We'll take it as it comes. But Codex Space Marines is coming out with a lot of changes and a lot of new rules. We're going to cover some of those rules now. So, chapter tactics are getting reworked, which I think is an important thing to note. So, every chapter tactic is getting beefed up, basically. Some are getting a bit of a sideways shift, but generally speaking, every chapter tactic is being improved. So straight away that's a difference with what happened with Chaos Space Marines, where all the Legion traits stayed the same. So for example, you've got Crimson Fists, which originally just used to have, if you've got a unit that contains 5 models, that when resolving an attack made by a model with this tactic against a unit that contains at least 5 more models than that model's unit, add 1 to hit rolls. So basically, if you're outnumbered by 5, then you get to add 1 to hit rolls. That's all they had. That was what was released in White Dwarf. Now they have that, but in addition, when resolving an attack made with a bolt weapon by a model with this tactic, an unmodified hit roll of 6 scores 1 additional hit. Okay, so they've received 2 buffs. It's not 1 buff anymore. They've received 2 buffs. Black Templars, for example. Black Templars used to, very simply, you get to reroll charge distance. Now they've updated it, so you do get to reroll charge distance, but you get to pick whether you reroll 1 dice or both dice. That's really good. That's that's fine. That does bring it in line with other factions' abilities to reroll charges, and they also they've added in some psychic defense. So if you take a mortal wound and it's only a mortal wound, you get a 5+ feel no pain. That's not a 5+ feel no pain against any attack. It's only a mortal wound. So typically defense against smite spam, which is again one I think that's good, because the reroll charge thing brings it in line with what other factions have got, and the mortal wound defense is vital because you have an army of black. If you're taking pure Black Templars, you have no psychic defense apart from a 1-use stratagem, and there are armies out there which can really spam mortal wounds, and you just have to sit there and take it, and it makes your expensive models just melt away. Now they have an ability to resist that, which is good. There was a little gap in the army, and it's not broken. It's not a 5+ feel no pain against anything. It's very situational, but that's okay. So Imperial Fist Siege Masters, again, they're like the Crimson Fist. They get a roll of a 6, scores 1 additional hit with a bolt weapon, and the enemies do not get the benefit of cover. That's fine. It's a little buff, but it's not too bad. Ultramarines Codex, they add, that's unchanged. Okay, that's unchanged. Add 1 to the leadership, and you can fall back and shoot, but it's -1 to hit. Okay. White Scars have changed. Units with this tactic can charge in a turn in which they advanced. Biker models with this tactic do not suffer the penalty. So that's what they used to have, and now they have biker models with this tactic do not suffer the penalty for moving and firing heavy weapons, or for advancing and firing assault weapons. So they're really good, White Scars. They can move and advance and charge, and they can move and advance and shoot with no penalty to their special weapons, basically. Now Raven Guard's an interesting one. Now Raven Guard, when Space Marines first came out, well, Raven Guard and Ultramarines have always been the most powerful, were the most powerful chapters in the Space Marine Codex. The Ultramarine chat tactic itself wasn't that great, but the fact that you got access to Rebrute Guilliman, that was what made Ultramarines so good. And Raven Guard actually had typically the best chat tactic, which was a flat -1 to hit over 12 inches away. Now they've sort of side graded and then buffed that. So now if you're over 12 inches away, you are treated as having the benefit of cover, which is like Orcs, which is what I said. If you remember, all those months ago, I said this is what they'll start doing. They're trialing it with Orcs, and then they'll bring it into other factions. Well, this is what they've done with Raven Guard. But interestingly, they didn't do that with Alpha Legion, did they? Which is interesting. So now, if you're over 12 inches away, there's benefit of cover. But if you are not a vehicle and you are entirely, and it says entirely, not partially, entirely within a terrain feature, then you get your -1 to hit benefit again. So this, I hope, is something that they will pass on to a Latok Elder, because basically no one really minds if you have the benefit of cover. That's absolutely fine. It's the fact, you can get your -1 to hit, but you have to actually be hiding now, not just out in the open going, look at me, I'm all out, I'm proud, and -1 to hit for some reason. No, now you have to be in cover, which is okay. It represents you sneaking about, and the enemy knows you're in the cover, so they'll saturate the area with fire, but it's very inaccurate because you're sneaky. That's absolutely fine. So now we've got the Salamanders, which they used to just have. It was a bit like I think it was the Bad Moon Orcs, was it? The ones which were lucky. So they used to be able to reroll 1 hit and 1 wound. They can still do that now. So you reroll 1 hit and 1 wound with a unit, but also they ignore AP -1. So they get the Steel Legion tactic as well, which is interesting. Iron Hands have gone off the fucking chain. So Iron Hands used to be, you get a 6 of Feel No Pain, which is good. Now they have a 6 of Feel No Pain, and they Overwatch in a 5 or 6, and their vehicles get the Valhallan trait, so they count as having double wounds for damage tables. So, overall, what do I think of this? When these reveals were being done, what did I think? I thought all that was good. I thought all that was absolutely fine, because Space Marines were a little underpowered. They were a little underpowered, and their chapter tactics were okay. But even I noticed it with my Black Templars, which was, I felt like I didn't have a huge amount of special rules in comparison to other factions. Like, I just got to reroll charges. That's it. And, especially when playing versus, like, my Guard, which often have, I can Steel Legion, for example, I can ignore AP -1, and on my vehicles, and my infantry get an 18-inch rapid fire. That most of the factions, their traits did two things. But Space Marines, because they were the first guys to come out, or one of the first guys to come out, their regiment traits were a little bit subdued. Their chapter tactics were a bit subdued, so they only got one trait. They only got one bonus in their chapter tactic. So at this point, when this reveal came out, I was like, okay, cool. I dig it. It's a little buff. It's a little rework. That's all they need. I mean, Chaos Space Marine players, little unfortunate they didn't get any changes, but it's okay. Like, maybe it's okay. Like, it's a little buff for Space Marines. It'll probably bring them up into the solid mid tier. But Games Workshop didn't leave it there, and that's where I think the big mistake is, and that's where I think I'm going to preface by saying I personally believe they've gone a bit too far. Okay, because you have to remember, this isn't like the only buff Space Marines have received. Okay, they've received Bolter Drill, and they've also received, which, for those of you that don't know, Bolter Drill is, if they stand still with regular infantry, they get rapid fire even if they're over 24 inches away. You get rapid fire anyway. And certain units like Terminators and Bikers always get the maximum rapid fire. So Terminators with their Storm Bolters can fire 4 shots at 24-inch range, which is pretty cool. But that was good, and people are already saying like that's good for Space Marines. That's very good. And then they've now received a rule called Shock Assault. So in addition to what in these enhanced chapter tactics, they had received another rule called Shock Assault, which was if they are charged, or do a heroic intervention, they get an extra attack. Now, that's for all Space Marines, Chaos Space Marines, whatever. Everyone gets that rule. Okay. Now, the thing is, Shock Assault, it's good, but I think it's a little bit... It's slightly too much. I would simply have had, if you charge, you get an additional attack. It's Shock Assault. It's not Shock Counter Assault or Shock Heroic Intervention. It's Shock Assault. If you charge, you get that bonus. And the reason I think it should have been like that is that's a little bit more balanced, because it gives you the incentive to charge, to be close combat, because you want to get the charge off so you get the bonus attacks. You don't want to be receiving a charge, because then you wouldn't get bonus attacks. I think it should have been just if you attack, but whatever. So that I was like, okay, that's cool. It's slightly, they've been slightly generous with Shock Assault, but okay, I get it. So at this point, I was a bit like, they've given Space Marines a lot of buffs here, but I guess those buffs go out to Chaos as well, so it's kind of balanced. And then yesterday, on the 7th, they had a huge reveal for lots of new units. And this is personally where I think Games Workshop have gone well overboard. And it's well, if you're a Space Marine player, especially a Primaris one, you're going to be absolutely loving it. But I think they've taken Space Marines with those two buffs plus Bolter Drill that they'd given out, so traits, Shock Assault and Bolter Drill, that would have made Space Marines comfortably middle tier. That would have made them probably on par with Imperial Guard, which is where a lot of people want to be. It would have meant that your mono Space Marine armies would have been really good. But what would have been solid, not top tier, but like Mono Guard isn't typically top tier. It isn't winning tournaments. Mono Guard is typically, it's winning a few little rogue trader tournaments, little local ones, but grand tournaments, Mono Guard doesn't tend to win them. It just tends to place in the solid top third. And I figured that with top half, and I figured that this buff they've revealed so far, that would have put Space Marines in a similar position to Guard, where if you run Mono Space Marines, you're not going to win a tournament because you're not running Soup, but you're going to place very solidly middle, top half, middle of the pack, which is where ideally you want a lot of Mono armies to be placing. Soup armies by their nature are going to place higher, but Mono armies run well should always place mid. Should always place mid, and it's only crap armies and bad lists and bad players which should fall into that bottom half. If you bring a Mono army and play it well, you should expect to come in the top half. Typically, if you bring a bad list or a bad player, you should expect to finish in the bottom half. Even if you that's not disparate. So people who come in the bottom half, I don't want me there thinking you're all shit players. But maybe you had a list which you were just trying something cool out. I'll just run a list which only has flamers in it. Yeah, you're not going to do that well. You'll do okay, but you can't expect to come in the top half unless you're under some very wacky circumstances. But that's where Marines would have been with the buffs that we've talked about so far. And then they have revealed a whole load of new stuff. So the first thing they've released is a new unit for this Primaris called an Incursor Squad. Basically, it's an alternative to the Infiltrators that were released with Shadow Spear. So these guys get the same concealed positions. They get the same smoke grenades. They get the same bolter. So far, I don't see any advantage to why you'd ever take Infiltrators. They get all the same stuff as Infiltrators, but now they don't suffer any modifiers when using ranged weapons. Any negative modifiers. That's amazing. All those Elder Flyers, -2, -3 to hit. These guys don't give a shit. And for those of you that aren't aware of what the Infiltrator Bolter does, if you get a roll of a 6 to hit, you just automatically wound. So you get a chapter master around these guys. You're going to get plenty of 6s to hit. You're going to start pulling planes out the sky with bolters. Very cool, but a little powerful, right? On top of that, these guys ignore cover. Totally ignore it. Now, again, for me, I would have had one or the other. I would have had Infiltrators with maybe ignore cover and these guys with ignore range modifiers. But no, these Incursors get so much. I actually don't know why you would take Infiltrators. I honestly don't. They get everything but more. Now, even more so, these guys get paired combat blades, and if you attack, when making an attack with this weapon, an unmodified roll of a 6 scores an additional hit. So not only are your 6s in shooting good, now your 6s in combat are good. You get these guys around a chapter master. You get these, they're going to absolutely tear things to pieces. And don't forget, these things are strength 4, right? So even if you don't get 6 to hit, you're wounding a lot of planes on 5s anyway. You get a bunch of these guys with bolter drill around Gilliman. You're rerolling all your hits, that's lots of auto wounds. You're rolling all your wounds, so even the ones that get through are going to absolutely dominate. These things are really anti-flyer, which is incredible. They also get there is a cool thing where they get a mine now, where you can place a mine, and the first enemy unit to move in 3 inches takes D3 mortal wounds. If it's a vehicle, it takes D3 +1. That's cool. Nothing against that. That's actually cool. But again, is that only for Incursors? I believe so. Okay, so I think maybe Infiltrators also get the ignore cover thing, so apologies for that. But these guys get ignore, the Incursors get, Infiltrators get ignore cover, Incursors get ignore cover and ignore modifiers. So, and they can place cool mines. Now, the new transport for the Primaris is fine. It's a floating rhino. Comes with a few guns. Don't really get the point of having a million. I don't know why Games Workshop was going all stubbers on on Primaire. Stubbers are low-grade weapons. These are your top-notch guys. Don't get why you're giving them Stubbers. So it's an upgunned Rhino. So a Rhino comes with a Stormbolter. A Razorback comes with a Stormbolter and 1 heavy weapon. Okay, cool. This thing comes with 2 Stormbolters and a Stubber and a heavy weapon. So it's so it's even more. It's upgunned. It's an upgunned Razorback. Obviously, it's got fly, so it can fall back and shoot. But it has the assault vehicle rule, which means after you've moved, you can get out, but you can't charge. So it's not an assault vehicle as in assault into close combat. It's assault as in like a mechanized assault. So you push forward, you get out, you start shooting things. It's that kind of assault. It's not a close combat vehicle. It is an assault vehicle. But again, that's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. Space Marines can now do with this rule, and I don't know if it's going to apply to other models, but at the very least, with this new floaty Rhino, the Impulsor, the Space Marines can now do something which no one else can do, which is get out and shoot. Or get out after moving, which is amazing. And just mad. It's mad. It's really powerful. And it gets more. That Impulsor has got so many options. You can do a orbital bombardment with it. You can have anti-air heavy stubbers or missile. You can have missile launch. It comes with a missile launcher with frag crack and Icarus missiles. So it's got better missiles. But the best thing about this one, this is really underrated. Well, it's not underrated. I don't hear enough people talking about this. You can take a shield dome for it. Okay. So the shield dome gives it a 4+ invulnerable save. Now, I'm looking at this now. Okay, it's a shield dome. So I don't know, honestly, I don't know if that shield dome also provides it to the men around it. But if it does, you've got a transport there which itself has a 4+ invulnerable save and can give a 4+ invulnerable save to all the guys around it. Now, if that is true, that is insanely powerful. And it's just more invuln save spam. More invuln save spam. So this is all like so far we've got new transports which can give invulns, which come with more firepower. You've got guys which are ignoring modifiers and ignoring cover, but these are all on like specific models, right? So I get it. So some people are like, well, those models are better. Okay, fine. You've got the new Invicta Tactical Warsuit, which is, it's cool. It's a stealthy it's a dreadnought which can infiltrate like the infiltrators and incursors. So you're going to have dreadnought, and it comes with either an autocannon, which I don't think you'd really use. Bear in mind, it comes with a twin Iron Hail autocannon, which is heavy 6. So that dreadnought, not to get salty here for a second, guys, and I don't want to think there's not been a huge amount of salt at this point. I'm just saying there's a lot of buffs coming from Marines, right? There's a lot of buffs coming from Marines. There's no salt up until this point, where this twin Iron Hail autocannon is heavy 6. So what you're saying is that dreadnought has a better autocannon than the Exterminator. Because the Exterminator is only heavy 4. Which is just crazy. Why does that dreadnought have a better... It's meant to be like a light recon autocannon. Well, why the hell is it better than every other autocannon out there? That's a better autocannon in terms of rate of fire than the friggin' ones that the Knights get. They're 2d3. They're not flat 6. And the heavy flamer that it comes with, it's not heavy. It doesn't come with twin heavy flamer. It comes with an Incendium cannon, which sounds like something from Harry Potter. Incendium! Which is a heavy flamer, no problem with that whatsoever, apart from the fact it's got a 12-inch range. Which is just insane. That means this thing can do what no other flamer can do, which is infiltrate and get a shot. Now, some of you are saying, what about the Hellhound? True, but the Hellhound has to start on the board, right? So it's not like you can avoid it and you can counter deploy against it. The Hellhound with a 6 has only got 16-inch range, and has start on the board. Now you might say, what about the Genestealer Cult? True, Genestealer Cult do have the Atalan Incinerator, which is a heavy flamer which has a 12-inch range, but it's only 1d6, and that was kind of the trade-off. It's like, here's your heavy flamer with longer range, but it's only 1d6. This thing has a heavy flamer with a 12-inch range and 2d6. It's a bit like, you can't have everything. It's the best heavy flamer out there. Yeah, Infiltrators, cool. Infiltrators get a cool thing. They get the Infiltrator Commorate, which means basically, if you have the Infiltrator Commorate, then you get the benefits of having a Phobos Captain and a Phobos Lieutenant if they're on the field of battle, no matter where they are. So it's kind of like a super Vox caster. That's the best way of describing it. So you can have a Phobos Lieutenant and a Phobos Captain on the field of battle, hidden, out of line of sight, back end of the board, arse out of nowhere. And all your Infiltrators, if they've got a comms array, will still get the bonuses no matter where, even if they're on the other side of the board. Okay. Eliminator Squads. Now, Eliminator Squads originally came with these cool sniper rifles, which were okay, and they looked pretty badass. But now, they've upped the rifles so that they're all strength 5. So these guys are shooting heavy bolter rounds, apparently. Okay. Or you can equip them with las fusils, which are like las cannons, but practically better in every way. So a las fusil is a 36-inch range las cannon, except for it's only strength 8, but it has a flat 3 damage. Let me fucking tell you, go and ask any orc player, or if any of you have been on the receiving end of an orc player, and they will tell you how amazing flat 3 damage on their rockets is. Flat 3 damage on these las cannon-like weapons is absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. Now you might say, but it's only strength 8, which means they'll be wounding things like knights on 4s, so no problem, right? Well, unfortunately, there is a problem, because the Eliminator Sergeant comes with an ability called Guided Aim, which means if he does not shoot, then you add 1 to hit rolls and to wound rolls of those Eliminators. So suddenly those Eliminators become, those las fusils become better than las cannons against practically every target. Against every single target. Think about this, right? So a las, or equal to a las cannon. Okay, so against the toughness 9 thing, they both wound on 4s. Because the las cannon wounds on 4s because it's strength 9 for toughness 9. And the las fusil wounds on 5s but gets +1 because the sergeant, so wounds on 4s. Against knights, toughness 8. The las cannon wounds on 3s, so does the las fusil. But then the las fusil gets better against everything that's toughness 7 and below. Every other vehicle out there, which is the majority of vehicles which are toughness 7. Majority of vehicles in 8th edition are toughness 7. Which now the las fusils go to wounding on 2s. So you're hitting on 2s, more than likely re-rolling. Wounding on 2s, get a lieutenant in there, re-rolling. AP -3, or better, which we'll get to in a moment. Flat 3 damage. Now, they also, so that's really powerful. And again, I'm not saying there's any, when I say a problem, I mean there's a problem when it comes to why would you ever take a las cannon versus the las fusil? I mean, why would you? So those Eliminators are really, really good. Now you also get something called covering fire. Now if you're the first time the Eliminator Sergeant fires Overwatch with his Instigator Bolt Carbine, which you're probably going to give him anyway because you want him to be as cheap as possible because he's going to be forgoing his firepower most of the time. You get, after you've resolved Overwatch, you get to move, but you can't advance. Well, that's fucking incredible. Basically means even if enemies get just over 1 inch away from you, you fire your Overwatch move, that 1 inch guaranteed charge becomes a 7-inch charge. That's not guaranteed. That's not guaranteed at all. Most people don't like making charges on a 7. And no one likes doing it on a 9 from Deep Strike, and no one likes doing it on a 7 because it's like a 50-50 chance if you've got no rerolls. So that's good. Now, I'm a little salty about this one simply because Ratlings had that ability and it got taken away from us because it was overpowered. But now you're giving it to Space Marines. Okay, so maybe Ratlings should get it back, right? So, that's, but the point is there are things out there which counter that, like Banshee Mask, for example. The point is that if your eliminators shouldn't be screening like that. The Games Workshop says, oh, they're amazing screens. Well, they're not. It's like they're not amazing. You don't want your very expensive eliminators having, if they're getting charged, something's gone wrong. Either your screen has failed to protect your eliminators, or your eliminators are screening, in which case they shouldn't be doing that. So it's not terrible. It's just realistically, it just means you can't deep strike behind and try and take them out because they'll just move away. You deep strike, you get your 9-inch charge, they fire Overwatch, move 6 inches away, you can't make the charge. So it means you have to kill these guys by shooting. But they are good at shooting. They've got camo cloaks and everything, so they're going to be horrible to try and outshoot, and they're going to be impossible to try and charge from any sort of distance. Now, we have seen things about custom chapter tactics. Basically, custom chapter tactics are coming. So this definitely smacks of the old regimental doctrines from 4th edition, where you can pick and choose bits to make a cool regiment. Basically, if you have a custom chapter, you can choose there'll be a list, and you can choose 2 things to take from that. So, for example, you might want, if you were making the Red Templars, you'd be like, well, these guys are Sons of Dawn, so they'll have if I get a 6 to hit with a bolt weapon, I get an extra hit. But I also want to be good at combat, so I'll take the reroll charge thing. That's how it works. So you get to pick 2, or you might be like, I'd like a really gunliney army. I want to really gunline the shit out of my opponent. So what I'm going to do is take the Salamanders, reroll the free 1 roll for my heavy weapons, and then I'll take the bolter shot thing, the extra 6 to hit. Or I want really sneaky Salamanders, so I'll go for Salamanders, which get the Raven Guard bit of always being in cover, and the always hard as ignoring AP -1. That would make them hard as nails. So yeah, there's that, for example. So that's cool. I actually don't see a problem with that. That just allows you to make custom chapters. None of those should be realistically more powerful than others because it's only 2 options you get to pick. And again, you wouldn't get access to, if you want to do that, you're then not getting access to unique stratagems. Remember that. If you pick a successor chapter, you might get to cherry pick which bits you want for the chap tactic, but you will not get access to things like Signs of Gilliman, for example. So up until this point, if you're with me so far, you've seen there's a little bit of salt coming from me. And you can see that Space Marines, especially Primaris, are getting a huge boost. Their existing units are getting boosted. They're getting a whole raft of new units. And those units have a lot of special abilities. But we've already established that, before we even got to this point, what had been revealed with Shock Assault, Bolter Drill, and new chap tactics, that was already enough to put Marines into the fucking middle ground. All this extra stuff is really starting to tip Marines into top tier, to good shit. But then Games Workshop has given them even more. So now they get something called Angels of Death Combat Doctrines. Okay? So any Space Marine gets this, apart from any Codex Space Marine gets this. So if you're not in the main Space Marine Codex, so if you're Dark Angels, Blood Angels, Space Wolves, you don't get this, which sucks to be you. If you're Chaos, you don't get this, which mega sucks. But this is a huge buff to Space Marines, what's coming here. So basically, how Combat Doctrines work is there's 3 doctrines. There's Devastator, Tactical, and Assault. You start off with Devastator, and you can switch after turn 1 to tactical or assault, and let's say you switch from Devastator to tactical, and then after turn 2 you can switch to assault doctrine. You can't go back, so you can't switch from Devastator to tactical to Devastator. You have to go Devastator, tactical, assault, or Devastator, assault, tactical. Okay, that's how it works. So you can only pick one once, but it stays in effect until you switch. So if you get the Devastator doctrine, it starts off on turn 1, you keep that throughout the whole game if you choose not to switch. Okay? So it's not like you get it for one turn. No. You get it for the game unless you switch, and then you swap it out. So you get Devastator doctrine for the whole game, apart from if turn 2 you switch to tactical, and then you have tactical doctrine for the whole game. Makes sense? And basically what this does is, if you have the Devastator doctrine, then any heavy or grenade model weapons get plus 1 AP. Tactical, it's any rapid fire assault weapons get plus 1 AP. An assault doctrine, any pistol or melee weapon get plus 1 AP. That's incredible. Basically, guys, you build, how I see this happening is you don't really switch between doctrines. You build around a fucking doctrine. You build around one. So Space Marine armies now in there are going to have AP -1 across the board. You obviously if you switch and mix and match, you're not going to get that. But Space Marine armies will. If I was doing this, for example, if I was taking lots and lots of the new Primaris, I would build my entire army around the tactical doctrine. Because then think about it, you've got those incursors which are ignoring modifiers, and I said we'd come back to incursors, didn't I? You're ignoring modifiers, you're ignoring cover, and now you've got AP -1 across all those bolters. So let's look at these guys a second. Why wouldn't you spam incursors? Why wouldn't you do that unless they're not a troop choice? But think about it. You've got a unit there, which let's look at the Elder Flyer spam. Let's look at Elder Flyer spam, for example. You've got a unit of incursors, which, let's take Ultramarine incursors, for example. You know, why not? You've got Ultramarine incursors, which can hit on a 3, no matter what. Next to Gilliman, if he stays the way he stays, or even if it's just next to a captain and a lieutenant, you're getting. But let's say Gilliman. You've got incursors which are hitting on 3s no matter what, re-rolling. Any 6s become auto wounds at AP -1, and then you wound on 5s, and you get to re-roll all wounds because of Gilliman. And anything that you get through is also AP -1. And don't forget, you've got Bolter Drill. So you don't even need to necessarily infiltrate these guys. You know, you don't need to infiltrate these guys too close. You've got a 24-inch range threat. I mean, you could combine this with maybe like an age defense line. I don't know if you have to. Pardon me. I don't know if you have to deploy an age defense line in your own deployment zone. I haven't checked that, but imagine you don't, or imagine there's a big bit of cover. Imagine playing ITC, lots of ruins, right? You infiltrate as much as you can into those ruins. You know, you start having captains and lieutenants in there, and suddenly you're just getting insane levels of rerolls. You're just blasting planes out the skies with bolters, which is just madness. It's absolute madness. And I think that's just they've gone too far. I think they've gone too far with Marines. I mean, they were good where they were, but now I think that getting that AP -1 on a lot of stuff has really that is the step too far. Okay, Bolter Drill I'm fine with. Shock Assault, I think they did it a little too much. It should have just been for charge, but overall I'm fine with. New Chap Tactics I'm fine with. Space Marine Chap Tactics were too weak. That's no doubt about it. They were just slightly too weak, and they just needed a little tweak. And Games Workshop got it bang on. Games Workshop, for the first time ever, adjusted something, and it was fine. And even these new units, the Incursors and the Infiltrators and all that, even all this stuff, it's like, yeah, it's really, really good. It's good, right? But it's a new unit. It's not buffed a unit. It's a new unit, and you know they're pretty good. They're pretty good, but their sort of balancing act is, I guess, they don't have a great rate of fire. I mean, each one of these is only putting out 2 shots. Each one of these guys, it's not fun, you know. It's not too much. Each one of these things in a vacuum is not too much. And even giving Marines AP -1 on its own in a vacuum is not too much. But you add all these things together, you've got Marines which are rapid firing all the time, which have got AP -1 nearly all the time, which even if you get, so they're shooting the shit out of you. And if they're, let's say they're fucking Crimson Fists or Imperial Fists, they're getting any 6s they get, they're just getting more hits. They're just getting more and more hits. And they're ignoring your cover. And then, like I said, they've got AP -1 now. They've got they've got more shots. They've got ignoring cover. It's just so many buffs, and they've over-egged it. Realistically, there should have been 2 out of these 5, 6 buffs that they've received. They should have got 2.5 of them. And that would have put Marines in a really nice place. As it is, I seriously think that Marines are going to be really, really powerful now. Okay? So, the question is this. And I think this will warrant more discussion. Okay? Because I want to reiterate, there's no salt in this video. I'm just saying I think Games Workshop went a little too far. And I think Games Workshop have made it a bit like some of the older choices, a bit like, well, why would you ever take a plasma cannon now when you can take a las fusel? You know, why would you ever take a las cannon when you could take a las fusel? And I guess, you know, that's it has made some choices out there. Why, you know, but I think, you know, overall, I'm on the fence about whether I'm going to get pissed off about this or not. I'm not decided. Because at the end of the day, this is, and if you've lasted to the end of the video, right, this is where you get the sort of the real nugget, right? Because a lot of people out there on the internet are fucking crying about power creep. They're crying about a lot of stuff. Okay? But ask yourself, remember 2 things. Number 1, a lot of this new shit is Primaris. Okay? And Primaris stuff, as a general rule, is very points intensive. The Infiltrators, for example, are 22 points a model. Okay? 22 points. For every Infiltrator that the enemy buys, you can get almost 6 Guardsmen. Okay? And those Infiltrators have got a huge amount of rules. Absolutely fine. But 6 Guardsmen with 1st rank fire, 2nd rank fire, that's a lot. That's what, 30, 20, is that 24? 24 shots. 24 shots. You get 24 shots every single, 24 shots. You're going to hit with 12. You're going to wound with 4. The Infiltrator is going to fail a save. You basically, over 2 turns of shooting, you kill that Infiltrator. And he doesn't kill 6 Guardsmen. He doesn't kill 6 Guardsmen. He fires, even if he kills, let's say he kills a Guardsman a turn, he gets 2 shots. Hitting on 3s, he might drop 1 there. Wounding on 3s, he might drop 1 there. AP -1, you might get the 6 up. The point is that statistically he's going to kill it. Let's say he kills a Guardsman a turn. So even if he goes first, he kills the Guardsman a turn. You still get to fire 5 Guardsmen at him. He loses a wound. He kills another Guardsman. You get 4 Guardsmen shooting at him. He dies. So, thinking about this, Infiltrators are very, very expensive. So they need a lot of these. They not need, but it's if they stay the same price or even go up a point or 2, and they get all these rules, I have no issue with it because Primaris are inherently expensive. If Infiltrators go down in points, it's fucking bullshit. In fact, if Space Marines in general go down in points, it's fucking bullshit. But I don't think they will. Touch wood. I don't think they will. I think Games Workshop had a look at Marines, right? Okay. And this is, 1 minute. Second thing that you have to remember, or you have to ask yourself is, when was the last time you saw mono Marines place highly in a tournament? And the answer is very rarely. Very, very rarely. Marines have been reduced, when it came to tournaments, to a gimmick army. Right? You saw 5 repulsors in Guilliman. That's typically what you saw. The only Marines you ever saw in top tier competitive armies were either Deathwatch, Kill Teaser, Storm Shield, and Storm Bolters, or Blood Angel Scouts to fill out a battalion for a couple of Smash Captains. That's all you saw. So what I think this has done, basically, is it has brought mono Marines, because no one, it's brought mono Marines to the forefront. Because Games Workshop had to make a decision, right? It's how I see it going down in GWHQ, right? Games Workshop had to make a decision, which was Marines currently, for what you buy, for what you in terms of points, what you get, doesn't quite cut it. Now we have a choice. We can reduce the points cost of Marines. Let's say make Tactical Marines 11 points. Make Scouts 9 points. We can do that, but think about that. That just starts making like a Marine. That just means that Marine, you're going to basically almost turning Marines into like a Horde army. And Marines are not a Horde army. They are an elite army. They are the quintessential. They're meant to be the elite army. It's only with faction creep that they've become the in Custodies, for example, that they became the non-elite army. The Marines were meant to be the angels of death. They were meant to be the best, right? So Games Workshop said, but we don't want to turn them into a Horde army. So what's the alternative? We can't reduce points, but they need improving. We'll give them special rules. So which means, sure, your infiltrator is 22 points. Your tactical marine is 13 points. One of the most expensive regular infantry you can get. Compared to other people. Guardsmen are 4 points. Marines are 13 points. So bear that in mind. Infiltrators, like we said, which are becoming an obvious troop choice, or intercessors, which are like 18 points a model. That's expensive, right? So those Marines, what you have to remember, they've got all this extra damage output, right? They've got all this extra damage output, but they're still just as killable as they were before. So if you've had no problem killing Marines before, you shouldn't, in theory, have a problem with killing Marines now. It just means that Marines Space Marines are now a force to be feared, which is what they should be. And Games Workshop, I think, have done, whilst they've received a lot of buffs, and I think it's unfair that Chaos Space Marine players didn't receive as much. In the scope of competitive play, I think mono Marines now will sit comfortably in the top third. Okay? And if you start seeing Marines winning loads of tournaments out there, then that's okay. Because, Marines are meant to be really, really fucking badass. Now, okay, the question is this, from a guard perspective, which is, we received a lot of nerfs in early in the edition, because we were considered overpowered. But Games Workshop have shown that they no longer really want to nerf things. They want to add. They want to keep things the same points and add in gaps, basically. So they typically they introduce a faction maybe and it's a little weak. They'll bring it up. So rather than knocking down, they bring things up, which is I understand that. I understand that. So the question is now, from a guard perspective, should a lot of those nerfs we initially received be reversed? Should a lot of those guard nerfs be reversed? Should the conscript nerf be completely rolled back? I think it should be at least relooked at. I totally think it should be relooked at. Should the commissar nerf be? Should that be undone? Yes, without a shadow of a doubt. Conscript should go back to being 3 points a guy, and commissar should go back to having you kill one model. Conscript should. I'm happy for them to barely take orders. I'm happy for them to take orders on a 4+. Fine, whatever. That's the middle ground. I'll give you. That's what I'd go for. But if Games Workshop has changed tack on how they want to balance 40k, then they do need to look at some of those nerfs that those early nerfs that they made. So, what do you guys think? Because I bet a lot of people will think, when I've seen this, they will come on here expecting Assault Mine. And I like to think I've been a little, I've been relatively neutral. I've said there's some great positive things out there. I've said they've gone a little bit too far, I suspect. My end stance is I suspect they've gone a little too far. Maybe one step too far. Like they did with the conscript nerfs, they went one step too far in a negative way. I think they've gone one step too far in a positive way with Marines. But at the end of the day, I just think it means you will finally see mono Marine armies consistently at tournaments, which is not a bad thing. I think it means that Primaris is going to be... a lot of people there are saying this is going to make Primaris the fucking bee's knees. Well, it's a very interesting point, that, isn't it? Because you start looking at things like, obviously, aggressors, which get a million shots per guy. Yeah, okay, but they've got short range, right? Yeah, it does make Primaris look really, really good. But 8th edition, this is the last thing I want to close on. So my question is, before I close, the question is, what do you guys think? Is it broken, overpowered, or is actually Marines were weak and they've just been brought up to their rightful place now, where, I think mono Marines versus mono Guard now will be a really fucking bitter match, where the Guard will need overwhelming numbers against the elite units of the Space Marines, and that's cool, and that's how it should be. I think Marines versus Guard, Marines are going to have to go more elite, and Guard are going to have to go less elite, because it's going to come down to that equation of how many Guardsmen is this worth. That Lascannon's worth 5 Guardsmen. 5 Guardsmen will do more damage versus those Marines. So I think that's something we have to take into account, which is fine, absolutely fine. Do you think they've gone too far though, or do you think it's Marines are now, when you actually take a step back and breathe, Marines are now actually the force to be feared they always should have been, and it's not bullshit like Skyhammer and Gladius like we got in 7th edition. People are saying this edition has become 7th edition, and I don't necessarily agree with that. Because 7th edition, by the end of it, they were giving away free shit, and people were able to fire twice, or Riptides could fire like 4 times. We're nowhere near that level yet. Nowhere near that level. Marines were a weak faction which have been brought up. That's my opinion. And what you have to ask, what a lot of people are saying, well, Primaris are getting a huge amount of love. It's like, okay, Primaris are getting a huge amount of love. But what is one of the fundamental tenets of 8th edition? Quantity over quality. There are some armies, and I said this in my what's the state of competitive play, and the state of competitive play is you either have to be super elite or super horde. Typically that's kind of what you want to be going down. A take-all-comers army in competitive play is, it's not really going to do it. Not really going to do it. You have to have that gimmick, right? You have to find that pressure point. But the general principle of 8th edition is more is better. People will tell you it's better to take, 8 shots, strength 7, AP -1, 2 damage, versus like 3 shots, strength 9, AP -3, 3 damage. People will say that because the 8 shots have the potential, the more shots have the potential to do more damage, whereas the one-off shots don't. So, 8th edition is about numbers. That's how you break the game, right? You have numbers. And Primaris don't do that. So, I know this is a very long video, but this is, it's huge, a whole entire... It's like, this is like a... Primaris, basically, it's an entire faction reveal. But that's where I stand on it. That's my final point. Mordian Glory does not think this is overpowered. He just thinks it brings Marines up where they should be. Where they should be. I think there's going to be a few other factions that'll get this treatment. I don't think you'll see... for example, I don't think Eldar will get any buffs. I don't think Dark Eldar will get any buffs or anything like that. Be very surprised. I think they're bringing people up to the same level now. So if everyone's overpowered, no one is. Think of it that way. So, hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think. Long one, but of course, I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys next time.